So are you ready to master the franchise mode in MLB The Show? Dive in with me as I reveal game-changing strategies and secret benchmarks for calling up prospects. This isn't just a game, it's your team, your strategy, your victory. Don't just play, dominate the field with my expert guidelines. So this video is going to go over the guidelines that I use to call up prospects in my franchises. I don't play these games, I watch them or I sim them. It's a completely cool CPU versus CPU franchise. So keep in mind when I'm actually telling you how I call up my players that I'm not doing any of this to actually have the ability to play with them. That this is all for CPU versus CPU stuff. I'm going to go over what to do during spring training, how I use spring training to best help me, the overall aspect of it, the monthly update, and the team comparison / team needs. So I'm actually in the spring training of a year that I'm actually about 5 years deep into. And this is a perfect example of how I can show you how to best utilize spring training. So how I'm using it, and I'm actually on the last day because I actually just need to get through up until here because I don't want to have to use one of my call downs or send somebody up or down during the regular season. So I simmed all the way up into the last game. The reason why I did this is because I was thinking about calling 2 players up. I really needed a second baseman. I'm actually going to talk about why you need to look at your team needs when calling players up as well. But for this instance, I needed a second baseman this year. I really don't have a second baseman or anybody that can really play it because I have everybody else in their respective positions. But I was thinking about either having Jackson Morrell or Brett Freeman. I just didn't know which one I should actually do. So I said, you know what? One is really good batting from the right side. The other is decently good from the left side. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have them rotating days. So I had one batting against right-handed pitchers, and then I had the other batting against left-handed pitchers. So one had 41 bats, one had 83 bats, and that is a very, very big difference. But as you can also see that the difference in average is completely different, like absolutely completely different. Plus, Brett Freeman definitely does have some very good stats for me. He has good reaction, he has good stealing, good speed, and he has real good contact. And I'm very confident based on how he performed in the spring training that he will actually be able to translate this into the regular season. So I'm actually about to send Jackson Morrell back down to AAA. And again, he's 23, potential A. So he has a few more years to develop, honestly, at that lower level. For me, for right now, I just didn't feel like he was ready. I honestly just felt like he needed more time. And you can see he batted 1.93, which is absolutely terrible, especially in MLB. I cannot have you bat in that, especially when we're not rebuilding. We're actually going for another World Series. So we really don't need any holes, especially when batting. We don't need anything that could actually potentially harm us. So that's why I'm going to go with Brett Freeman. So you could use spring training in a way that I just did. If there's different players that you want to test to say, okay, can this player play at the MLB level this year? Get your roster, get your lineup and everything. So put who you actually want to test and see if they will be ready for the MLB level in their prospective positions in the MLB lineup. And once you do that, sim a few games, sim a few weeks. Just don't sim to the regular season. And then right before the last game of the regular season, just check on the stats. And if you're comfortable enough to actually go ahead with that push, then you can actually call them up and bring them to the MLB level. And if not, you can either trade him away or you can send him back down if he has a few more years to develop, which I'm actually about to do with Jackson Morrell. So the next thing I want to talk about is overalls. So there's actually a very easy way to do this if you wanted the most simplistic and basic way to actually know when to call plays up. And it's by looking at overalls. This also depends on what team you have. Overalls can be very dependent based off of team needs. But a lot of times, if you look at the rest of the teams around the league, they'll have a general consensus of what type of players and what overall players are in what level. Typically, it's in your AA system. You're going to have a lot of mid 50 overalls to mid 60 overalls in your AA system. From your AAA system, you're going to typically have higher end 60 overalls and mid to 70 overalls. And then in your major league system, depending on your team needs, you'll have those higher end 70 overall players and you'll probably have anybody over an 80 definitely on your MLB roster, because at that point they're not going to get any more progress or learn anything else in that minor league system, so they need to be up there once they're at an 80. As you can see, my team is kind of really heavily loaded on 80s, and this is just because I'm 5 years deep and my farm system is absolutely outstanding. I'm going to be doing a video on how to actually get your farm system up, so stick around for that video, subscribe for that. But as you can see for my farm system, I still kind of follow that same threshold. So if you look at my AA system, I'm really starting at those low tier 50s. I have some 40 overalls, and that's just to pretty much fill out the AA system. So as you can see, I'm actually over in the AA system, so I'm automatically gonna lower one of these down. So this 42 overall player, and he's a C potential, I'm going to actually move him down to my class A to free up some space on that end. But again, guys, you can see I'm still following that system. So that low to mid tier 50 overalls and kind of higher end to mid 60 overalls I'm having in this AA system. I do have a couple 70s. This is just so I can farm a little bit of wins. So I actually purposely put some players down there just so they can go off and help carry this team to a championship, because championships, winning, and actually doing good in the minors is going to translate to actually better development. But as you can still see, I'm still following that system. So then at this point, I have that mid tier 60 overall to pretty much that mid to high 70 overall system. And then we get into my MLB roster. These 52 and 53 are very much outliers. Those are just there just to fill in some extra space. I have 25 to 26 players on my active roster, but as you can still see, I'm still following that system. Looking at a team like the Milwaukee Brewers, they're not as strong as my team is, so you could see that they're kind of digging into their farm system just a little bit more than I am. But you can still see even this CPU team is following that same threshold. So as you can see, in their A system, they have a little bit of 50s, but they really start their AA system at 55, and then it goes probably all the way up to about 60, kind of pushing 70, but that higher end 60. And then their AAA system, it gets into really that mid-tier 60 level and kind of cuts off at that higher end to mid 70 overall. If you look in your leagues, you probably will see something very, very similar to this system. And that's a great way to just look at a glance at, okay, when should I be calling this player up? Are they ready for the next level? It doesn't necessarily have to be for the MLB. If you're just looking at a quick glance and say, hey, is this AA player ready for AAA? That's a very, very, very good way to determine if that player is ready or not. So another quick way to determine how a player is doing and if they're ready for the next level, if you should drop them back down, is actually very simple. So ratings in your farm system director actually contact you and update on a monthly basis. It's not weekly basis. They will upgrade their stats on a weekly or on a daily basis, but in terms of actual progression and regression and news from your farm director, that's going to happen on a monthly basis. So in this franchise, I just actually just got through the first 6 games and got to the next month, but you can see I got a notification in that top right corner. What does it say? So if I actually go to my roster, you can see that my farm director is actually going to tell me what's happening. So I only have 2 at the moment because it's only been 6 games, but you can see it says struggling AAA pitcher. Cade Popovich struggled during March, posting a 7.94 ERA over 5.5 innings while walking 5. That is absolutely horrible, but I'm actually not going to get on them too much because again, it's only been 6 games and I don't want to just penalize him for 6 games. And he's a starting pitcher, so he probably typically only had 1 game, and that game was very bad. So I'm actually going to give him another month to see if he turns things around. Farm director, AAA pitcher update. Gordon Grifalio posted a 0.00 ERA in March, collecting 5 strikeouts over 6.1 innings. Again, only been 6 games, so this is really, really, really good. But this isn't a big enough sample size for me to determine if he's good. It's something to watch out for. So on a month-to-month basis, that's when I normally like to actually go through and determine if I'm going to pull people up or send people back down or put people on my watch list on a month-to-month basis, because that's when I'm going to have the most knowledge of what's going on. So now I'm going to get into what I actually look for, the stats and the skills that I actually look for when I'm actually determining if I'm going to call a player up or down. I'm not going to go too much into this because it's a very simple kind of process that I go through. So for starting pitchers, I like to have their stamina pretty good in terms of stats. 75, 70, anything above that for a starting pitcher is pretty good for an MLB level. You want your guys to have a lot of stamina, but I really look for, especially if I'm determining if I'm going to call a player down, ERA and wins and loss ratio. So right now, Julio's doing pretty bad. A 6.0 ERA is actually really bad. But a good one, for example, is Daniel Espinal, who's 1-0. The game that he started, he actually won. He had 8 strikeouts over 6 innings, which means he's typically getting out of innings. Only 4 walks, which is not bad at all. And he had a 2.84 ERA, which is really good. For me, anything under a 3 is really good. Anything under a 3.5 is average. Anything that's a 4 and above, I'm really kind of getting shaky at, and I'm like, okay, I may actually kind of send you down. Like this guy, for example, right here has a 40 ERA. I don't know how the hell he has a 40 ERA. I don't even really want to get into it. If this was a longer sample size of games, I would think about actually sending him down. But again, it's only been 6 games, so I'm not going to do that at the moment. But that's something you want to look at too. You want to look at their ERA for pitchers and their strikeouts, the walks, everything like that. For relief pitchers, however, what I like to go into is the MLB stats, and I actually like to see how many saves they have and how many blown saves and how many holds. What holds are how much that they've actually held a lead by leading by so many points and pitching like 3 or 5 innings. Blown saves are how many saves that they actually blown, and saves are how much that they've actually were able to get out of innings and win games when there was either bases loaded or people on base and scoring position. Did you guys get a save? So I like to actually look at a lot of that for relief pitchers to determine, is this a good relief pitcher? And I like my relief pitchers to have really good velocity. In terms of hitting stats and playmaking stats, I really look at the batting average. A good batting average that I like to have is anything above, I would say 300 is like really good. For the MLB level, anything above 250 is average. 275 is pretty good. For the contact stats, you really want your guys to have above maybe a 65, 70 contact on either side. And power, you want your power hitters, and you want to have a couple power hitters. So for your power hitters, you want something out of 70. That would be a really good telltale sign. And again, I really look at the batting average. Anybody that's not batting above 250, 300, I'm not thinking about calling out. If they're in a lower level and they're batting 300, 400, I'm thinking about automatically sending them up. Like Spencer Token right here, it's only 7 at bat, so it's not that big of a sample size again, but he's batting 429, which is really good. So if he was in a lower level and this was a bigger sample size, I would actually think about calling him up. And again, you want different speed stats depending on what position they'll have. So if they're a heavy defensive position, such as second baseman, shortstop, I would want good fielding, good arm strength, good reaction. And I would actually look towards those. So probably like 60, 70, stuff like that, and anything higher for those base positions. And say, for example, a center fielder in a right field positions, I would want them to actually have a lot more speed, especially at the MLB level. Especially for a right fielder, I would want them to have a really good arm. These are just some of the stats and the skills and the process that I go to and the guidelines that I follow when I'm determining if I'm going to call people up or if people are ready for the MLB level. If you feel like I didn't touch on enough or I could have went more in detail, let me know down in the comment section, and I can either elaborate in the comment section or make another video kind of going more into detail. But I hope this video helped. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 5K, so I appreciate you guys for that. We're at 1K at the moment. If you guys happen to miss my last video, it was a Road to the Show video, quite a banger. We're doing a series on Road to the Show, and I think you guys are gonna like that. And you can click the video on the right. It's actually a video that YouTube handpicks just for you. I think you would like that, so check out that. This has been your boy, Formula Cosmos. I'm out. Peace.